Okay, so the first topic that we would like to look at would be perimeter, and we are focusing on perimeter of various shapes that come in the examinations. Now, perimeter, it's important to understand while you are doing perimeter, even though you will see I am giving you several formulae to learn, and that you need to learn those formulae by heart. The learning of a formulae is more about how quickly you can get work done. You do not need to learn the formulae in order to answer a perimeter question, because perimeter is a basic. If once you understand what is perimeter, you can work out questions. However, because you are doing an examination, and because your examination is a timed examination and you will have to finish very quickly, learning a formula is what helps you to quickly get through a test paper. But it's not necessary in the sense that once you could understand what is perimeter, you will be fine in order to work out a question. But in order to work out a question extremely quickly, which is what is important for this exam, you will need to learn the formula. So the first thing that we will want to look at is perimeter. What is that word and what does that word mean? The word perimeter is it is talking about the distance around a shape. It means that if you stand up in one corner of a shape and you walk, then you are walking the perimeter around. So if I think of your classroom, for example, and I say to you that we would like you to walk around the classroom, then that is perimeter. You cannot be standing in the middle of the classroom. If I say to you, walk around the classroom, you cannot find yourself standing in the middle of the classroom. If I say to you to take a piece of rope and run the piece of rope around the blackboard or the whiteboard so that around the board has the rope, then the rope cannot end up in the middle of the blackboard or whiteboard. It needs to be around. So perimeter basically means the distance around. And for me, I like to always say to you, when you are looking at perimeter, it is really about thinking, if I was a little ant, if I was something very tiny, and I was standing on a paper, and I'm looking at a rectangle, a square, etc., and somebody was to ask perimeter, then it would mean, quote unquote, walking around the outside of the shape, not finding yourself in the shape. So that is basically what you need to know with regards to perimeter. As I said, in this particular examination, you have these types of shapes here. So you get squares and rectangles, which we learned from before, that a square and a rectangle fall under quadrilaterals. So you are asked sometimes about parallelograms and rhombus and all of those shapes, but basically you find yourself really only looking at perimeter of squares and perimeter of rectangles. You also would have learned that there are different types of triangles, isosceles and equilateral and scalene. Those are your types of triangles. However, again, the perimeter would be, it is not very different, but you will see some differences between perimeter of isosceles and perimeter of equilateral, depending on the shape. Circles. Now, although I am saying perimeter, you should know that the word circumference is what is used for circles. When we are talking about perimeter or distance around a circle, it is really circumference, which really means perimeter. But we do not have to learn that for the examination, because the examination does not have circumference of circles in it. Compound shapes. A compound shape, the word compound, we could remember that from language arts. In language, you learned compound words. And a compound word is the creation of a word using more than one word. So you take table and spoon and you put it together, you get tablespoon. Right? You put book and bag together, you get book bag. So what is a compound shape? A compound shape will be taking a triangle and a rectangle and putting it together. If I take a triangle and a rectangle and I join it together, I don't have a rectangle and I don't have a triangle. I have a compound shape. Sticking two triangles together, sticking two rectangles together, putting a square with a circle, those are compound shapes because they are made up of more than one shape. You are also, even though nets do not come in the examination, nets of solids do not necessarily come in the examination, but I will kind of look at it at some point in time with regards to how do you find perimeter of a net. So if you remember in the lower levels, you would have learned the net of a cube will be 6 different squares. So perimeter of the net. That is different. Net is different than solid. So you could also find perimeter of solids. It is different, right? Just going to pause for one moment. Look at the different shapes that I have here. Right, so just to reiterate and to show you net. So if I were to ask the net of one of these and I ask you to find perimeter of the net, now as I said, it doesn't come in the exam, but still, if I were to say find the perimeter of the net, then I would walk. Now look at where I'm putting the light and I'm walking. So if I were to walk, I would walk up here, then I would walk on the triangle, and then I would walk up again, then go across. And I will go down, I'll walk on the triangle again, and then I'll go down and then come back to where I began. And that's what perimeter is in a nutshell, right? So when you are working perimeter, especially of compound shape of nets, sorry, you would find that it depends on the net. If you look at this one, you will see I will end up walking around the triangle. What I wanted you to understand, or at least to make a note of, is that I don't walk on this square. This is a square-based pyramid, and I'm talking about perimeter. And if I'm working with perimeter, and I were to start walking from this tip here that I am, then I would walk 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I will end up walking 8 lines. I will not walk in these 4 lines here that are inside, because perimeter is not about the inside. It is about around. So that is what I wanted to kind of clarify with regards to nets. In addition to which, as I said, you do find yourself learning all of these: parallelogram, rhombus, kite, etc. And they may give you a perimeter of one of these. It's not a very difficult thing to do because perimeter means distance around. So if I were walking around this parallelogram, then I will just have to figure out what are the measurements and add up right around, which I will show you shortly. But there is no need to really go into this. What comes a lot, like in almost every single practice test or what may more than likely come in the exam, is rectangle, square, triangle. In addition to which, with regards to triangles, as I said, there are different types. So because there are different types of triangles, you would find that perimeter, it's still distance around, it's still walking around the shape. They are all still looking at walking around the shape. That's what perimeter is about. So it's not very different. When a teacher teaches you, in a lot of cases, coming up, I'm sure, you would have heard them talk about the cube. And when talking about the cube, they might have talked about the volume of a cube. They might have spoken about volume of a cube. They may not have spoken about perimeter of a cube. Now, perimeter of a cube, again, I will show you, it is not volume. So those are the things that we will be looking at. You might have heard teachers talk about volume of a cuboid, but not perimeter of a cuboid. So it's a very different thing. And that's why I need you to understand that in this particular session, we are looking at squares, rectangles, triangles for now. And then eventually we are going to move to compound shapes, and we are going to also look at cubes and cuboids in particular. The other two that I have, although it's here written down, it's not going to be taught, especially in this session, because it's not in the exam. Now, earlier I said, and I'm trying to choose my words carefully, I said it's not necessary to learn the formula. The word when I said, so don't want you to misquote me and go and tell a teacher that Mr. Bisasa said you don't need to. That's not what I said. What I'm saying is, in perimeter, once you understand perimeter means to walk around, then these formulae were created. All of the formulae that you are seeing listed were created based on the fact that you walk around shapes. So why do you need to learn the formula? You need to learn it because in an exam, you cannot sit down and try counting 1, 2, 3, 4 sides of a square. You need to be able to do it from the minute you see it. The formula pops in. It will save you time. So that is why we learn the formula. So these are formula which I'm going to list out for you here. Then I'm going to explain to you where they come from. Perimeter of a square, side by 4. If somebody is to ask you, what is the perimeter of a square? Side by 4. If somebody is to ask you, what is the side of a square? Take the perimeter divided by 4. If somebody says, well, if the perimeter of a square is side by 4, what is the perimeter of a rectangle? Perimeter of a rectangle, length plus breadth by 2. What is the perimeter of a square? Side by 4. What is the perimeter of a rectangle? Length plus breadth by 2. How do you find the length of a rectangle? Perimeter divided by 2, take away breadth. How do you find the breadth of a rectangle? Perimeter divided by 2, take away length. This, as I said, will not come in the exam, but we will discuss it at some point in time. Circumference of a circle, diameter by pi. See that there? You notice I don't have the word P-I-E there. I said, well, if you were listening to me, you would have heard me say circumference of a circle equals diameter by pi. This here, it looks, if I draw it, it will look a little bit differently. If I were to draw it, it looks more like that, right? It looks like that. That is a symbol. It is a symbol, it's a mathematical symbol, and the name of the symbol is pi. And if somebody asks you, well, what is pi or what this symbol means. It is a symbol, yes, but in mathematics, it is 22/7. It is an improper fraction for 22/7. It is also 0. No, not wait, 7 into 20, 7 3s are 21, 0.14, not 0.1, I keep saying 0.1, 3.142, sorry about that, right? Improper to mix would be 7 into 21, 22 is 3, remainder 1/7. So 3 and 1/7 or 3.142. And it actually has a ton of numbers after it, right? But you don't have to learn that. And you don't have to learn this either. But it will, I will show you what I'm talking about here, but you don't have to learn that. You won't have to learn these. These are not in the exam, but you will be told about it. You don't have to learn this. This is not in the exam. What definitely must be learned is the following ones that are ticked off here. Perimeter of a square, finding side of a square, perimeter of a rectangle, finding length of a rectangle, finding breadth of a rectangle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Definitely you need to learn. In addition to which, these will come. Now, I will discuss more and I will say to you why are these different. But in most cases, a triangle, when a triangle is given, it is usually just add up all 3 sides. In most cases, when you are given a triangle, it is add up all 3 sides. But you have different types of triangles, as you can see here. And we will discuss what to do because these are different types of triangles. But basically, if somebody is to ask you, and that is why I said perimeter is distance around. If somebody is to ask you, well, how do you find perimeter of a triangle? In general, you add up all 3 sides. That's how that works. I'm gonna just make sure that you are clear on this set here. These are the formulae. Again, these are the ones that you would need to learn. Perimeter of a square. 2, 3, 4, 5 of these 5s. And then you also have to learn these triangles here. Those are the formulae for now. So in addition to triangles, as I said, there are compound shapes. And we spoke about it. We spoke about the fact that a compound shape means that you have taken 2 shapes. For example, I take a square like a rectangle like this, and then I join up with another rectangle like this, and I get a sort of L. That's a compound shape. So when you are doing compound shapes, perimeter means a lot of the times what they do is that they give you numbers and they tell you find out the perimeter. You need to find out any numbers that are missing before you find perimeter. So compound shapes doesn't have a formula per se. It's more of a method of watching the shape, working out whatever is missing in the shape, and then finding perimeter. That is why at the beginning of the whole lesson, you have to know perimeter of a shape is to walk around the shape. And once you could walk around, then you know you are walking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And you will realize that you do not walk in the center here. So if it has a number there, you can't count that number. So compound shapes doesn't have a formula to learn. I will come back to solids and nets. Just let me go back to what we were doing before. So before we jump to solids and nets and stuff like that, let's look at what takes place with these. So as I said, there are formulae to learn. So with regards to perimeter of a square, the reason why the formula at the end of everything is side by 4 is because of properties of a square. And the properties of a square means that all 4 sides are equal. So if I'm looking at finding perimeter, it means that why should I say this is 10? Here will be 10, here will be 10, and here will be 10. Why say 10 plus 10 plus 10 plus 10 when I know they are equal? So just 10 by 1, 2, 3, 4. That's why it is side by 4. So as you can see here, in the longer version of the question, the person added up 4 plus 4 plus 4 plus 4. They did it the long way because they want you to understand that even though you may not remember the formula side by 4, you have to understand the concept. The concept is that if you were asked to find perimeter, it means walking the top, which is 4, walking this side, which is 4, walking the bottom of the shape, which is 4, walking on this side, which is also 4, and ending up with 4 plus 4 plus 4 plus 4. That's how they got the 16. In an examination, because you have to finish quickly, you don't have time to say, well, 4 plus 4 plus 4 plus 4. So you say 4 4s, 16, side by 4. Same way down here, 5 5s will give you 25. So if you are working it out, you have to be careful because you could end up getting 5 5s, 25, which is totally wrong. Because that's why everybody is continuously saying to you, learn this. Perimeter is the distance around a two-dimensional shape. In other words, perimeter is the distance around any flat shape. Therefore, if I come down here and I end up making the mistake of 5 5s, 25, it's wrong because it meant that we did not understand what perimeter really means. And perimeter means if I stand here and I walk, I will walk 5 plus 5 plus 5 plus 5 to get 5 4s, 20. So perimeter of a square is side by 4. Why is it side by 4? Because a square, in a whole different topic, you learn that square, properties of square, a square, all 4 sides are equal. In the same way, rectangles, you learned, I said it, it's actually not written here in that way. I wrote my formulae as length plus breadth by 2. And there was a reason why this, now I know it offhand, but then when you are asked, well, why is it length plus breadth by 2? And it's important that you get into that habit as well too. Because what if I had just said, class, whenever you see a rectangle and they ask you perimeter, it is length plus breadth by 2. And you work that. And nobody knows why. That would not be learning anything. You learn a formula, but why? Why is it length plus breadth by 2? Because in a whole different topic, you would have learned that a rectangle means that the top of the line and the bottom line are parallel and they are also equal. So if I tell you up here is 7, then underneath here will definitely be 7. Cannot be anything else. This is not a square, so here could never be 7. Because in a rectangle, this side is equal to actually this side, but the 4 sides are not equal. So if I say this would be 4, then here must automatically be 4. So when a teacher says, well, length plus breadth by 2, what they mean is you could do 7. Well, I have a different number here. So you could do 7 plus 4 plus another 7 plus another 4. You get an answer. 7 walking around, 4, 7, 4. And somebody can say, well, why don't you group the 2 7s together? So you get 2 sets of 7s, and there are 2 sets of 4s. So why not do 2 sets of 7s, 7 2s 14, and 2 sets of 4s, 4 2s 8, and do that as an addition? Because why not? Why not group this 7 and this 7, this 4 and this 4? Which works out. And then somebody else would have come along afterwards and said, you know something, you have me now multiplying by 2 here and multiplying by 2 here. Why would I do that when I could just take this 7, add it to this 4, and then find that and multiply by 2 only one time? That's why it is length plus breadth and then multiply by 2 only one time. The reason behind it is also important, because if the formula drops out of the brain, you need to know, because they wouldn't do it like this. They won't say 7 7 3 3. They will give you nothing. They may give you just this is 7 and this is 3. You have to know opposite sides are equal. Opposite sides are equal in order to work out. So when you are doing the plane shapes, the rectangle and the square, these formulae are important. With regards to, as I said, trapezium and these, they come, but it's really just distance around. So if I were to just show you this one, that's why again, understanding what is perimeter is important, because if I were to do distance around and I'm walking, I will walk 1, 4.3, 2, 8, 3, 4.1, 4, 10. I do not walk here. So if you make a mistake and you add that 4, wrong answer. That's why there isn't a formula. It's not necessarily you have to learn a formula. It's just the concept, distance around. In addition to which, same thing with the parallelogram. So if they give you a parallelogram and they tell you, let's put a number here. Let's say height. Let's say this is 4. When you are working it out, if you end up, for some reason, they put a 4 there, and you end up adding that 4 to the work, you will get it wrong. Why? Because perimeter is around, not inside. So that is why that would be extremely important. So plane shapes, it's not very difficult to learn with regards to perimeter. But what happens is that sometimes we forget the formula And sometimes we are not reading carefully to say, well, because they will not do that as well. Very few times they will say, what is the perimeter? Or what is the length? They tend to ask you certain things. They tend to make it into what we call real life situations. So they will say, what is the perimeter of a playfield? They will say, Joshua ran around the playfield. They will not say, what is the perimeter of the land? They will say, Thomas wanted to put a fence around his land. So you have to be careful with regards to also reading carefully, because they will not always say, what is the perimeter? They will probably try to tell you, I want to paint a border around my bedroom, around the walls in a bedroom. Or they may tell you that a picture frame needs to be painted around. We want to know around, we want to stick something around it. So you have to know perimeter and you have to know area with regards to reading carefully. So we looked at finding perimeter, and I'm also seeing finding side. So we also have that. We also have where, and I think I saw it in, even though it's on this paper here, I'm going to show you this one. With regards to so you have here with regards to perimeter of a square, 9 by 4. Perimeter of a square, 9 by 4. They also might tell you find side. So perimeter is given. You find it by finding side by dividing. If you multiply to find perimeter, divide to find side. In the same way, so if I look at this one, look at number 1, find the perimeter of the square given. It has a square, it's 9 on one side. So perimeter is side by 4. 9 4 is 36. Number 2 though, if I know the perimeter is 84, how do I find out a side? It will mean taking the 84 and dividing it by 4, opposite. So 84 was divided by 4 to find 21. So that is where the formula comes in. And they were on the worksheet just now when I showed you. If they say find perimeter of a rectangle, you need to know the length is 12 and the breadth is 8. And the formula is important. Length plus breadth by 2. 12 plus 8, find an answer. Multiply that by 2. Get an answer of 40. Same concept applies to number 4. But number 4, you will realize this is again formula that you would have to learn. So the formula, if I want you to find out length, given the fact that I'm telling you perimeter, perimeter is divided by 2, then you take away width, and that will give you the length. Now, you divide the perimeter by 2 because we learned just now that rectangles have 2 sets of lengths and 2 sets of breadths. So you divide the perimeter by 2 and then you take out the width. And it's very much similar down here by dividing the perimeter by 2 and taking out the length will tell you the width. These two formula are the same thing. Now do not get confused by P over 2. It means divide. If I put a number over 2, I am dividing by 2. Those would be the concepts with regards to the first sets of parameter. So what I have covered, I am going to pause on. I will come to solids in a different presentation. But what I have covered, let's make sure that everyone would have covered everything here. First key concept, perimeter means walking around. Second concept, you usually learn about squares, rectangles, triangles. You will also see compound shapes, you will also see solids. But you don't really see circles and you don't really see nets, etc. Understanding that compound means more than one of the shape. These things that are here, what you do is that you have to learn them by heart. You have to learn it by heart. So with regards to this list that is here, you have to learn them. So perimeter of a square, perimeter of a rectangle, and I also went on to triangles down here. And as I said, in a different presentation, we will continue looking at the nets and solids, etc., which I will come to.